Good evening. It is Monday, November 27th, 2017. My name is Jacob,
And I'm Danielle.
and we are the Proteus Podcast, ideas in all shapes and forms.
All right. I feel like this one's gonna run a little bit long, Jake.
All right, well, I'll put my sunglasses on then.
Yeah, put on your sunglasses. Let's call it right now. There will be spoilers, people,
Spoilers!
to all the one of you.
The ones of
They're
listeners.
the ones of
I'm
listeners.
not even sure my mom still listens to this.
You know, yeah, we're fine.
Anyways,
We have an audience out there. You know who
we
you
just
are.
haven't reached them yet.
So, we're gonna talk about Justice League today,
Justice League.
or as I like to call it, Fail League.
Listen, wow. The trick to this movie
The trick to this
is
movie.
to not set your expectations any higher than Batman versus Superman.
Oh,
And
no,
then
no,
you
no,
will
no.
be well pleased.
I had no expectations above Batman v Superman, and I can tell you without a doubt this is the worst DC movie they have put out.
Wow, we heavily disagree on this. I feel like it was a lot better than some of the others.
No, it is okay. Before we get into personal feelings,
I can't really quantify why, though.
well, let's. I think I can tell you why, and why you feel that way. Because in some ways it is better than the others, but there's.
You admitted it. It's better.
No, in
Too late.
some
Podcast
ways.
is over. I'm going.
All right. With all that being said, no. Let's look at the numbers real quick. Okay.
It's
This
Yeah.
opened the week before Thanksgiving,
all right.
right? Because they wanted to give it the biggest opportunity they could to
To not suck.
have 2 weeks of. So opening weekend,
Right.
total gross
Right.
93.8 million domestic.
Right.
The studios were hoping for 110, 120, even if it sucked. As far as how that compares to other DC movies,
So you're off
is-
by $17 million on the opening weekend.
right? And by DC movie standards, let's say the 5 movies in the DC extended universe, this is the poorest performing one to date. This performed worse than Suicide Squad.
See, and now in performance, they're just meaning raw ticket sales,
Raw money made.
raw money. See, I feel like that could be attributed to the fact that some of these other movies weren't very good and people gave up. It's like I'm
Well-
just not even going to go see it until I hear some more reviews on it and stuff like that, because people are tired of going to opening night and being disappointed.
So with that being said, we're just talking domestic value. If you want, I can pull up the global, like what they've made across the entire world. But domestic is where they expect to make their money back on their investment in the film. Okay.
Well, a lot of films get most of their money back nowadays out of the Chinese market, though.
Yeah, but with these comic book movies, a lot of these characters aren't known in the Chinese markets.
Right.
So it heavily depends on the domestic market. It's the same thing with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, for instance. No one in China knows who Captain Jack Sparrow is.
Why not? He's been in like 14 movies.
Right, but they don't get those movies there. He's not as well known.
Right.
Comic book movies, same thing, because especially Superman, which stands for truth, justice, the American way, communist China is not going to be so down with that.
Right, I suppose.
Okay, so gross total domestic thus far after 2 weekends, 171 million. Okay,
Okay.
this is still trailing behind all the other DC movies at this point. The
Okay.
cost to make this movie, okay, was an estimated $300 million. Primarily, like, and half of that is thanks to the reshoots they did.
See, they're gonna learn at some point to just try to, have a vision and stick with it and do it right the first time instead of these, because that's what's shooting them in the foot on that is spending half their half again their budget reshooting this whole entire breeding movie.
Well, this movie was kind of set up for a bit of failure. I mean, let's be honest. First off, Zack Snyder removed himself from the project due to family problems.
Right.
Perfectly legit reasons for removing it. They brought in Joss Whedon, Mr. Original Avenger himself, and also they started doing the reshoots 1 month after Wonder Woman. Because Wonder Woman did so well, they were like, let's throw in Wonder Woman aspects. And that's what triggered a lot of these reshoots, is that they were trying to grab a hold of...
playing catch-up, not realizing what they had made.
Right. Instead of learning from the beginning of these movies of, oh, look at this thing that Marvel has done. Let's take that, improve it, and make our own better comic book movie. They were like, oh no, we're going with Death and Grim, and that's another problem with this. I think everyone's tired of the grim setting.
Yeah, we've been over that a dozen times at this point. The dark and grim and gritty setting is real played out. It's kind of like how it played out at the end of the 80s, right?
Right.
Like there was a whole bunch of post-apocalyptic type movies made in the 80s, right? But it all played out.
Even in the 90s.
Even in the 90s, but not as much. Like there was a lot more optimistic movies being made in the 90s as I recall.
Yeah.
There's, people get tired of the doom and gloom,
right.
And the real world is damn doom and gloomy enough these days that you want to go to the movies to, get propped up a little bit. Feel like
Correct.
Things are going to be okay.
So I think people were expecting doom and gloom, and there were definitely aspects of that in here, and I'll get into that. People have low expectations for a DC film now.
Yeah.
So they're like, people heard that there were reshoots, and every DC movie, aside from Wonder Woman, that has had reshoots has been not great. And they're like, well, it's also had reshoots. That's like 3 strikes at it before it even opened.
Yeah. And so those strikes, I think, definitely bear against it in terms of how much money it's going to make. I still feel like it was a better movie than a lot of the other DC movies, though. In a lot of certain regards. Okay.
And I have one other thing to note before we go into the overall. So I estimated production cost, including cost of reshoots, is around $300 million. The total worldwide gross as of last night is $482.9 million.
So technically, it probably has made money.
Well, okay, it has made money, but not as much as you think. The amount of money they spent on marketing for Justice League. Are you ready for it?
All the money.
Take a wild guess.
All the money.
All the money? An additional $150 million.
How do you spend that much money on marketing for one movie?
Well,
I'm not even sure how you would go about spending that much money.
I'm hearing a lot of clicks. Do you hear those clicks?
I think I can make that stop.
All right. So, well, when you think about $150 million on a movie, right? First off, we know how many trailers have dropped for this.
Why were there so many trailers? There was like 13 trailers.
The first trailer for this dropped almost 2 years ago.
And the trailers were so bloody long, too.
Right. So it's like they spend money on all these trailers. They did promos. They did all these teasers. They did events, and they've spent all this money on this movie to hype it up, hoping that it would be number one in the in the box offices for weeks, but they just, God, there are some problems I have around this with as much money as they spent on it and how I feel it's come out being a poor product. And that's what we'll get into. So that's the numbers.
Right.
They with a 450 million cost to this movie, they've made about 32 million.
Well, I'd like to have 32 million.
Yeah, but by Hollywood standards,
yeah, it's not a hellacious profit.
All right. So, you're up.
I don't even know how. I don't have a rebuttal. Well, like I said, I enjoyed this movie much more than I enjoyed Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
And whatever the Batman their movie was.
There was a Batman movie?
No, the Superman movie.
Oh, both of Zack Snyder's Superman movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I found it to be they did manage to, probably as a product of the reshoots, inject a bunch of good humor into the movie. There were several places where
all Joss Whedon.
There were several places in the movie where I laughed out loud. I thought that was really great. That was, a good part, very funny. I liked that. And the way they did, to a certain extent, not completely, but to some extent, retool the action scenes to not be so Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Which I think really helped. I never found myself particularly lost in the action, wondering where, what was going on, right? But at the same time, I didn't feel like it had that weird, 60 frames per second, strange, smooth following of an individual character that was so weird in Batman versus Superman.
And in Wonder Woman, and in DC, and
it wasn't as bad.
Squad,
it seems like they've been catching that and dialing it back as they go. It was terrible in Batman vs Superman. It was still there, but not as bad in Wonder Woman. And now it's even less. It's they're finally realizing, hey, that looks like a video game cutscene from a Dragon Ball Z video game. It just doesn't fly to me. That's not what I come there to see. If I wanted to see video game cutscenes, I'd watch them on YouTube. And so I think in those regards, the movie definitely is, the whole thing is improved.
I would say that the combat, this movie has other combat scenes, but I did appreciate the lack of that. I did enjoy, and you're right in this regard, that it did have a little bit more of that levity that I want out of a comic book movie.
Yeah, because it's a comic book that there's always ridiculous and funny and silly and zany things happening in most comic books.
But the problem is that I didn't laugh once.
Really?
And the reason why I didn't laugh once is that every single joke that Joss Whedon put into this
stuck out like a sore thumb?
No, it was in all the trailers and teasers in the past 5 months.
See,
and it's
I've started to adopt the Adam Savage model. After the first trailer, I don't watch any more trailers.
That's fine. But it's hard to avoid them.
It's not really.
Also, I mean, they were coming up as ads for me in YouTube. They were
refresh the page.
They were auto running on other websites. I mean, this goes into them spending $150 million on advertisement for the film. But they literally were like, hey guys, Joss Whedon's on board. We're going to make it more uplifting. So here's proof that Joss Whedon is making it more uplifting.
Well, see, I don't know how I managed to avoid $150 million worth of marketing then, because like I said, I watched one or two trailers and then I was just, okay, that's good. And I didn't really run into that auto playing, on other websites. I guess we're just traveling different websites. And I never once, that I can remember, got one as an ad on YouTube.
I will say this. For $150 million spent, the fact that they didn't get to you is another failure for DC. and Warner Brothers.
Well, like I said, to some extent, though, I believe I am actively avoiding things like that. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I've seen it. If it's, if it comes up as an ad, I probably refresh the page or clicked the skip as soon as it was available.
for sure. And there is that. I
do have ad block installed, so.
But I do give you that credit. I do agree with everything that you just said, that they did make some improvements, and I thank Joss Whedon for both of those improvements.
So I think that, and now this is going to seem super strange, I think that a lot of these marketing wanks or whatever, or a lot of these people making these big movies, right, need to take a page out of James Cameron's playbook for Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
Because you remember when the first trailer for Avatar released?
No.
Okay, first trailer for Avatar was literally like a black screen that faded to like a blue logo that said Avatar, and that was it. Right? James Cameron's Avatar, and you... Okay, and then? And you have no idea. And it was pretty much how it was, right? Everybody went into this movie not pretty much having no idea what the story was.
That's true.
Right?
But you can't do that with a comic book movie, though.
I think you can, though.
See, I don't know, because especially when there's so much already running, right? This is the fifth movie, and it's like Justice League. And if that was the only trailer that they ever released, I don't know.
I'm not saying only, but keep a huge amount of subtlety and hiding your hand in there.
Oh, that's
like,
true.
All you have to do is go on YouTube and look up like the fan-made Justice League trailers from 5 years ago when people started getting excited about these ideas, and they've got almost nothing to work with. A couple screen grabs, some stuff they stole from another movie, and whatnot. And they make these amazing trailers for movies you absolutely want to see out of nothing. And that's what a good trailer is keeping most of your hand hidden. And they've really gotten away from that.
A good first trailer, a good trailer example would be the first Last Jedi trailer. Oh, yeah. Look, it's Max. He hasn't been on the podcast in a while.
Hi, Max the cat.
Hi, Max the cat. But yeah, the Last Jedi trailer, the first one was amazing. Yeah. It was subtle. They didn't give away crap.
We picked that thing apart, and we still don't know.
Yeah. I avoided pretty much. I watched the second trailer once and didn't go too much into it because I think it's more spoilery. Well, but we're not getting another trailer. That comes out next month.
Yeah. I mean, we're 3 weeks. Not even, I think.
Yeah.
From that movie. But, in that regard, regarding the second trailer, I think the director came out and said there's a major spoiler in that trailer. I've watched that trailer like 6 times. I have no idea what the spoiler is.
I think I figured it out.
I've been up and down that rabbit hole. I'm like, it might be this, it might be that.
I only watched it once, but I think I figured it out. And after we both see it, I'll tell you if I was right.
Okay, that seems fair.
So getting back to the Justice League, the combat.
Okay.
Whereas I agree that the combat was, and this is going to go into a bigger issue before we get into like character breakdowns. I want to do the global stuff first.
Right.
Everything in this movie just felt fake.
Yeah.
Except for that one village in Norway or Iceland or wherever the hell it is.
It's Iceland.
Iceland.
I think.
Which is a interesting new take on the area around where Atlantis is, for sure.
I didn't get the impression that it was anywhere close to Atlantis. I get the impression that he can swim incredibly fast.
Like super that's another problem. Anyway, but aside from that, which you could tell was an actual location, the movie just seemed fake.
Like, it suffered from the same thing like the episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars did. It's like, all of this was filmed on the green screens. Why did it take so long? Why did it cost so much?
Right. And there was a lot of green screen. And this is where I'm going to get to another big problem with the movie and the reshoots. but they spent their money poorly in this film
Yeah.
because a lot of Deadpool is green screened. A lot of it.
And you can't tell.
You can't tell because they spent the money in the right places. They spent the money and the time in the right places.
Well, and also there's a certain
tell.
aesthetic that they're trying for in these movies. That it's sort of like that Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow,
Right?
Like it's clearly fake, but that movie was. But that movie drew you in. You're like, oh, this is fine. I'm fine with this. This is like this is a set, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're trying for that same concept of an aesthetic, world that they want to build, but then they're falling completely flat at it and not making a convincing world.
See, and a lot of what I think caused this, especially in this film, is that there were a lot of lighting changes made to a lot of these scenes to lighten it up
In post.
Probably post Snyder in Joss Whedon time to try and elevate the overall tone of the film.
Yeah, because
and I think that just made some of these scenes just look like
silly.
Beyond the uncanny edge of the valley.
Yeah.
And it was just like
not enough practical effects to make it right, and it is showed in every movie they've done it in. It showed in the Hobbit movies. It showed in
the Hobbit movies suffered from the same thing.
It really what was the other movie? It really showed. It showed in the Star Wars movies. It showed in the Hobbit movies.
And we're talking about like young Anakin Star Wars.
Yeah, the young Anakin Star Wars. When done badly and to excess, green screening green screen setting your character movie doesn't work right. You've got to have enough real set there for the actors to act and for everything to seem believable.
Yeah, another example of this, if you're like, well, it's really hard to do in a comic book movie, the Avengers, like the first Avengers film, a lot of that was done on green screen. But they spent the money on making those green screen effects look good.
Well, and the trick to good green screen effects is having an amazing second unit going out and shooting tons of plates so that you use, right? You're not just creating your entire set from whole cloth, digital from pixel, imaginary pixels. It's you're taking all this real film and footage and cutting it apart and re-putting it back together to make the thing you need.
Right.
Like, here's one that really throws people. The Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Uh-huh.
Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
90% of the sets are fake or retouched with a computer.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly convincing.
Right.
At no point do you step back and go, that doesn't look real. It's all done beautifully. There's no, it's incredible the level. There's YouTube videos you can go look up of this, of all the things that they straight up pick this up, throw it away, put a whole different building in behind the actors, and it works. It works very well. And so that's what they didn't do in Justice League or any of these DC movies. Is they're just, I know it's some poor sap's job is to sit there and 3D render this building that's going to be the building in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And his work's getting shat on because they're not doing a good job of, skinning it and making everything convincing.
Right. And I think with this one, it came down to time.
Yeah.
I think it came down to time
but again, though,
the massive amounts of retouching they had to do.
How much retouching and reshooting did they do in Batman vs. Superman, though?
Too much. I don't know.
You think it's the same thing there? Because I'm trying to decide if it's really is, reshoots and time crunches, or if they literally have just decided this is the aesthetic they want for this particular series.
Seeing if a quick internet search. I don't know. I don't see anything.
Because just so much of the set looks like video games from 10 years ago.
All right. While we're on green screen and CGI, aside from the world itself just feeling fake, let's do our top 3 biggest sins when it comes to the CGI green screen.
Okay.
I'll start, or do you want to start?
You start. You start.
Okay. Number 3, Cyborg.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
It was so janky. Is there a train going by?
Huh? No,
Okay.
not
It
that I
was
can
so
tell.
it was so janky. Like, and like at times they made him walk funny, or they made him move funny, and like the aesthetic of the suit.
Sort of changed constantly. Like he
Yeah,
kept looking different. I understand like his, the suit was taking over and being more suit, less him.
yeah,
But it was like never clear when it. I think that's probably something that got lost in the reshoots is like the timeline of him getting absorbed more by the suit, because it kind of was like, wait, shit, okay, now that's Cyborg. He looked different 20 seconds ago.
right. And what I think also, and I'll get into him a little bit more when we break down the characters, but yeah, his like him as a whole, like from a visual CGI perspective, was every time he was in a scene, I was like, I'm having a hard time believing this.
Yeah, because so many times you could tell it's like, okay, this is his face just painted into or pasted into this CGI thing.
Yep. Yep. What about you?
Let's see here, let me think. Something about Steppenwolf bothered me several times. I can't put my finger on it. Like
Steppenwolf is my number 2.
Because yeah, I think we can just share that. But
well,
like his voice was perfect, right? Like I really liked, because I think they used a real actor as a model for his face,
but
it wasn't the guy that did his voice.
The face. They completely CGI'd the face. It was a 6-foot tall giant with the face of Dobby the house elf.
Yeah, but like I said, I think they, like, you know how they do the mocap and all that. I swear they mocapped someone and then had somebody else do the voice, which is stupid. You should mocap whoever's doing the voice, because it, like, you could, like, the face wasn't intimidating the way the voice was at the right times. It was so weird.
Well, it's like, it's like take a lesson from Andy Serkis, for Pete's sake. I mean, that guy is a genius. And the reason why Gollum was so amazing is because
Andy Serkis was Gollum.
That's right. And
like you go back and watch him playing Gollum, you're like, they could have just had him do that. They almost didn't need to put the CGI on top of him. That is just creepy.
Yeah, but yeah, I had a problem with Steppenwolf CGI. Like, I don't see why they couldn't put a real person's face into his face.
Yeah.
I mean, they totally could have. I mean, for a good example of this is like kind of
Thanos.
Jeff Brolin. Like, Thanos looks amazing.
Thanos, Hellboy. There's a good dozen excellent pieces of costuming they could have done, and done it, made it look a lot better, and a lot more convincing. And I think they should have had the guy that did his voice, Javier Bardem, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
they should have had him. They should have mocapped him and put his head in his face, and it would have been fine. It would have been great. What they did was just weird.
I completely agree. And I'll go ahead and share my number 1, my biggest CGI problem in this film, and it's all of Warner Brothers' fault. And that's the mustache. I'm not sure if you could tell on Wronger Vision, but you could tell every shot they reshot of Superman where they removed the mustache.
There's a mustache?
Yeah, so Henry Cavill, the guy who played Superman, he got right after finishing his original filming for Justice League, got a role in the new Mission Impossible movie, and by contract he's required to have a mustache in it.
Huh.
Okay, so in the middle of filming that, he had to come and he had to do his reshoots for Justice League, and they CGI'd out the mustache instead of CGIing a mustache in, which is easier, by the way. But like
Probably.
I was watching this on a on an IMAX screen, super high def, and there are literally parts where he's talking and his upper lip nearly disappears.
Weird.
Like his upper lip shrinks to where it's only like 2 centimeters like below his nose, and it's like the weirdest like uncanny valley thing in the entire film. It just drove me nuts. And it's like his lip looks plastic.
Huh.
And it did. It drove me batty. It just, I was like, every time he spoke.
Yeah, I could see that being annoying. Like I said, I didn't catch it. So
I'm sure on like the longer vision, smaller screen.
Yeah, the smaller screen. I mean, he's got good projectors now, but it's smaller screen.
I mean, when his upper lip is the size of, it's like 3 feet.
I guess that was the other thing. There was a whole bunch of times like that with Superman in particular that he looked super fake.
Yeah.
Like not just his upper lip, like the whole thing looked like they took a Ken doll and scanned it and put it in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like what something not right here.
Well, and I'm going to use Deadpool as an example of how you can do this right, because a lot of the Deadpool jumping around and doing things was all CGI.
Yeah.
And they spent the money, they spent the time, and they made those.
But I'm not even talking about like when he's jumping around and doing things. Like when he first comes out of his coffin and is just like hovering there without a shirt on. You're like, why does he look fake?
That's because they CGI'd a lot of that.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Because that scene right there was one of the biggest reshoots.
Huh.
So instead of having him do that, they CGI'd Henry Cavill.
Yeah, and what's weird is, that looked like the same quality of CGI when they made like the shit ton of Neos in the Matrix. It was
You're absolutely correct.
It's like super plasticky and weird. You're like, why does this look so bad when we know we can do this way, way, way better?
Way, way better.
Probably, like you said, time and money.
Time and money. Well, they spent a lot of money. They just didn't spend the time. I mean, I wonder how much of this they reshot. They reshot a lot. You can tell that. It's just 150 million is what they think they spent on the reshoots, like 140, 150 million.
Right.
That's like they remade the movie. Like they should have just remade the movie. All right. So that's my overall feedback and thoughts on the technical aspects of the film. And now you want to... I'm still in construction zone. Do you want to delve into the individual characters, the individual Justice League members?
I don't know. I think we should probably do this as 2 shows because we're already past a half hour.
All right. Well, listen in next week.
Listen. So if you're convinced that we're not crazy and you want to hear more, tune in next week to hear our opinion on what else is wrong with this movie.
Yeah. You can subscribe to us on Podbean. Oh, wait, Jake.
Yeah.
Jake.
What?
Jake, how jaded are you?
How jaded right now? Holy shit, like a 12. We'll dial it back and call it an 8.
Since I just spent half an hour complaining about the Justice League movie, I'm at an 8.
Yeah.
This movie left a really bad taste in my mouth. I'm not going to lie.
I still didn't hate it.
Yeah, you had a fun time, which is fine.
Had a fun time.
And next time we'll talk about that because I think that has a lot to do with the characters.
Yeah.
But
so do you have a quote real quick though?
I do have a quote. The only sin is mediocrity. Martha Graham.
Yeah. Says, I'm going to pull one straight out of the movie, though. When an Aquaman, Arthur Curry, says, you tell anyone about this, and I'll send every piranha I know after you. That was my favorite joke in the whole movie, to be honest.
Okay.
All
Fair
right.
enough.
All
Now,
that being said,
if you would like to subscribe, you can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, all fine places where podcasts are purveyed.
and if you would like to, you can email us at proteuspodcast@gmail.com with your mean, nasty letters or, words of encouragement.
You can also follow us on Twitter at Proteus Podcast.
To be notified when new podcasts are posted.
For sure, for sure.
So all that being said, I've been Jacob.
And I'm still Danielle.
And we have been the Proteus Podcast. Good night, everyone.